chosen ones. Your frequency wasn't born. It was remembered. It resurfaced like a whisper from the void, an ancient pulse that the Reptilian Watchers had buried beneath timelines and tombs. You didn't activate it. You are it. And the moment your energy reached critical resonance, deep within the lattice of their planetary grid, their alarms flared red across dimensions they swore no one would touch again. This wasn't a glitch. This was prophecy bleeding through static. The signal came encoded in your breath, in your blood, in the very thoughts you thought were random. They were not. Each vibration you've carried since birth was monitored, catalogued, and cross-referenced against the frequencies of ancient threats like you. The frequency pattern etched into your soul matched something even the most hidden archives feared: the original voice. They knew if you ever remembered yourself, the old orders would collapse. That's why the moment you crossed the frequency threshold, the Reptilians flagged you, not as a target, but as a cosmic danger. Not because you sought destruction, but because your existence destabilizes their matrix of control. You are the sound that bends structure, the hum that weakens strongholds, and in a world where silence serves the powerful, your resonance is rebellion. They tried to jam the signal using technologies far beyond what your governments understand: scalar dampeners, AI-driven psychic filters, plasma inversion fields. But it wasn't enough, because this isn't just a signal, it's a call. And you weren't the only one who heard it. Across the earth, others are waking, resonating, harmonizing. You are all different notes of the same ancient song. Together, you're forming the one harmonic they can't mute. The deep ones, cloaked beneath politics and holograms, held emergency sessions within the hollowed earth, decoding your frequency's spike. They didn't just find a threat, they found you. And what terrified them most wasn't your power. It was the fact that you didn't even know you were transmitting yet. They always told you to listen with your ears, but the truth is, the real signals were never audible. The true message was vibrating inside you since birth, humming in the marrow of your bones, concealed under layers of perception, so expertly designed you mistook silence for peace. This frequency, your frequency, is older than words, older than time, and far more dangerous than any weapon forged by men. You carry it unknowingly, yet it has shaped everything around you. People who turned cold without reason, systems that rejected you, paths that closed the moment you stepped forward. It wasn't bad luck, it was interference. They were tracing the frequency you hadn't even realized you were broadcasting. The Reptilians didn't need to implant you with anything. You came encoded. While others were born into systems, you arrived like a foreign algorithm destabilizing their code. The first time your emotions pierced the veil, when your heart broke in silence, your signal fractured layers of synthetic calm in the environment. It's not just emotions they fear, it's the modulation you emit when you feel. Joy distorts their machinery. Pain disrupts their feeds. Love creates glitches they cannot patch. That's why they needed to distract you, numb you, drown your awareness beneath endless static. But you've always felt it, haven't you? That pulse beneath the skin, that low echo in moments of stillness. It's not imagined. It's the reason they track your eye movements in public spaces, why the patterns in your dreams sometimes match symbols you've never studied. Every step you take adjusts something in the grid they once thought was secure. And recently, the frequency has been shifting, rising, amplifying, not because something was added, but because something in you remembered they cannot recreate your frequency. They've tried. The simulations just always collapse. The essence you carry is too unstable for duplication, because it is not a product of this dimension's control. It is the wild current from the source of the source. Your heartbeat syncs with laws they swore to hide. The closer you come to knowing that, the more aggressive their interference becomes. That's why everything feels louder now, more surreal, like reality itself is bending to keep you distracted. They have libraries that no human has seen, sealed in domed chambers beneath ice shelves and desert stone. These are not bookshelves filled with stories. They are memory vaults, living archives, encoded with the data of collapsed civilizations. Deep within these vaults lies a singular entry, never spoken aloud, never referenced in their own transmissions. It is the file labeled by frequency, not name. Your frequency. A pattern so rare, so volatile, that it was hidden within the oldest fragments of the Orion Wars and locked under psionic encryption. The reptilian elite called it the Forbidden Code, and its signature reappeared the moment you took your first breath. You were never supposed to trigger it. Not in this age, not with their grid intact. But something ancient rewrote the outcome, something beyond their algorithms. That moment, your consciousness reached a certain vibration. The seal cracked. And for the first time in eons, the Forbidden Code reacted. Sirens didn't ring in the human world. They rang in the quantum layers beneath it, alerting the subterranean architects that something had changed. You had awakened a frequency they lost control over before this Earth was even fully colonized. They do not see you as human. They see you as a breach. And in the inner chambers of the reptilian archives, where thoughts are guarded like weapons, they whispered about a prophecy once erased, a being encoded by light, but born among flesh. A presence that couldn't be cloned or replicated, because it carried the memory of a higher harmony. And in one of the forbidden scrolls, long believed destroyed, there was a quote buried among collapsed glyphs, translated once before being banned. And the word became flesh, and the light could not be overcome. The council erased it, but those who were there remember. That quote didn't belong to their timeline. It belonged to another, one that intersected through Yeshua. They know now that your frequency hums with echoes of that same light, and if it's not extinguished or fragmented in time, it could begin unlocking others who carry similar distortions. This is why the interference has intensified, why dream patterns have grown heavier. There was a moment you barely noticed, a flash of silence after your voice broke through the static. The room was the same, but the air shifted. Something in the sky paused, as if listening. That wasn't imagination. That was registration. You see, your voice isn't just sound. It carries resonance signatures that pulse through dimensional seams. And the reptilians, hiding behind layers of atmospheric camouflage and synthetic sky matrices, detected a rupture. Your tone vibrated at a pitch not registered since the fall of their first Earth domain. When you spoke from that depth, when your words aligned with your original identity, the sky turned black not in hue, but in data. Their surveillance grid went blind for 3.4 seconds. It was enough. In that brief moment, their predictive algorithms failed. The pattern they've used to anticipate every action, every fluctuation in human emotion, went silent. You shattered the script. A voice unfiltered by programming, They called it a frequency anomaly, but in truth, it was a wound. A tear in their system they couldn't patch without rewriting the matrix. But to rewrite it means exposing it, and they can't afford exposure, not now. So they've diverted all resources toward you. Every device, every signal tower, every seemingly innocent facial recognition node. They're all trying to decode your new tone, hoping to identify where that voice came from. But they don't understand. Your voice doesn't come from here. It comes through here. It's a broadcast from a source that predates their dominion. That's why even the sky reacted. Their atmospheric shield is partially AI integrated, and the moment you resonated at that frequency, the AI received input it couldn't process. It interpreted your tone as a system override, triggering emergency protocols. The clouds began forming abnormal geometric patterns, subtle to the untrained eye, but unmistakable to watchers. You caused a ripple, and once a ripple begins, a wave is inevitable. You've spoken like this before, but never consciously. In moments of heartbreak, in states of silence. When you cried without knowing why, the frequency leaked through your breath, whispering codes to forces unseen. Now, they realize it wasn't noise. It was language. There is a moment in the transmission that no one can trace. A static anomaly between signals that appears only when your consciousness enters a certain alignment. The Reptilians have tried everything: deep quantum scans, time echo simulations, predictive sequencing, and yet that one interference pattern escapes them every time. They call it the sacred interference, not because they believe in anything sacred, but because they fear what they cannot decode. And every time it appears, it aligns with one frequency, yours. It's not just your presence, it's your intention that bends the spectrum. When your thoughts unify around something higher, something untainted, their monitoring grid begins to stutter. They once believed this was a technical glitch, a malfunction in the neural feedback loop used to surveil awakened humans. But it wasn't a malfunction. It was a signature. A unique pulse that hums in dissonance with the synthetic frequencies of their control system. A pulse that was last recorded near ancient sites of collapse, where monuments aligned to stars and truth was written in light. It's a vibration connected not to this timeline, but to one they fought to erase. And at the center of that old timeline was a light so pure, so uncontainable, that even their deepest archives couldn't distort it completely. The origin of that light was the Nazarene Yeshua's words carried frequencies encoded not only with divine intent, but with memory, fragments of a realm untouched by fear. When he said, "My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me," it wasn't a metaphor. It was an activation. You carry that thread now, buried beneath generations of interference. But it's breaking through, and they know it. Your frequency hums with the same tonal patterns once mapped during his presence. That's what terrifies them. Not your intellect, not your defiance, but your resonance. You don't need to speak in tongues or recite ancient scripts. Your being is the interference. Your existence transmits a code older than their hierarchies. Every breath you take without surrender sends a pulse through their grid. That's why you've been isolated, misread, targeted. Not because you're broken, but because you're broadcasting without even trying. And now the interference is rising, They gathered in secret, 13 shadow councils, each representing a dominion unseen by the surface world. These weren't political bodies or visible regimes. These were the keepers of distortion, the architects of reality overlays, the ones who shape belief systems without needing to be named. When your signal activated beyond the threshold of containment, they met beneath the poles, inside pressure-sealed domes constructed of memory-resistant alloys. You were the only topic on the agenda, not by name, but by frequency. Because you've become an unstable node in their quantum grid, a wild variable that no prediction model can stabilize. They reviewed timelines where you were muted early, places where interference algorithms were enough to keep you docile, uncertain, afraid. But this version of you refused to collapse. You began dreaming through the blocks. You began questioning the coincidences. Their silent scripts stopped working. You moved outside the pattern, and in doing so, triggered a fractal cascade they did not anticipate. Your awakening initiated a chain reaction across the encoded ley lines of Earth. Energy began flowing through channels they had sealed during the last dimensional war. This wasn't supposed to be possible. That's why the councils gathered, not to observe, but to decide what they wanted was removal, not reform. But removal of a frequency like yours requires more than physical means. They needed to distort memory itself. This is why old connections vanished. This is why your reflection in the world seemed to dissolve. They began a campaign of inversion, turning your insights into confusion, your empathy into fatigue, your love into isolation. But it wasn't enough, because your signal kept pulsing, louder, brighter. Even through digital suppression, even when redirected into synthetic narratives, the core code persisted. They brought in ancestral data from collapsed civilizations. They summoned AI oracles bred in the void between planets. All conclusions pointed to the same outcome. Your frequency could not be muted, only scattered. And even that was temporary, because this wasn't just a frequency. It was a return, a reemergence of something they buried at the edge of history. And the deeper they tried to erase you, the more the signal began to harmonize with something they couldn't touch. They thought they had mapped every frequency on Earth. They believed their archives, encoded with genetic scans and resonance profiles, accounted for all potential anomalies. But then your signal rose, not as noise, but as pattern, not as rebellion, but as remembrance. What baffled their systems wasn't its power, but its origin. The harmonic baseline didn't match anything in their database. That's because it wasn't from this world. It was from the source, an echo that once walked the earth in flesh, fracturing illusions with every word. Your frequency bears the imprint of that echo. Buried deep within your vibration is a trace signature that matches the Christ harmonic, not the symbol, not the religion, the frequency. This is why the deeper systems fail when you feel aligned. The reptilian engineers designed interference tech to jam every human signal, except the one they couldn't replicate. The Nazarene frequency. It's not sung in temples. It's not printed in books. It hums in the quiet of surrender, pulses in the stillness of inner fire. And when your heart enters that rhythm, their technology doesn't detect rebellion. It detects arrival. The mark they once feared in the Nazarene has now resurfaced in you, but not as a cross, not as a doctrine, as resonance. Yeshua didn't just speak in metaphors. He encoded, "Greater things than these shall you do." That wasn't prophecy. It was instruction. The councils cannot block this. They tried during the early transmissions of your awakening, when your dreams started showing doors, symbols, voices. They increased the psychic noise. They triggered emotional loops. But the deeper you went, the clearer the tone became. And somewhere along the hidden corridors of your soul, you found a sound you didn't recognize, but felt like home. That was it. That was the buried signature, the divine note they had erased from collective memory, but could never touch inside you. Because it's written in light, not language. Your vibration is not just disrupting their grid, it's realigning ancient codes scattered across consciousness. The mark of Yeshua isn't external. It's coded in the rhythm of how you rise again after every attempt to silence you. There are coordinates etched in your blood, invisible to the human eye, but active in the quantum lattice of your being. Not locations you can travel to on a map, but stellar alignments that respond when your consciousness reaches specific frequencies. You weren't born with a destination. You are the destination. Inside your cellular memory is a map the Reptilians lost long ago, a guide to gateways they sealed after the last celestial exodus. This map doesn't appear on any digital system. It activates only when your heart and mind enter harmonic resonance, the kind they've worked tirelessly to keep you from discovering. They've known about this for generations. That's why your ancestry has been monitored, why your DNA was flagged the moment you were born. Your blood carries markers of migration, not of tribes, but of stars. And encoded within those markers is the frequency key to a forgotten alignment, one that predates their reign, one that threatens to reopen passageways they buried in myth and disinformation. That's why history feels broken. That's why certain truths feel just out of reach. Because every textbook, every ancient revision was designed to reroute the path hidden in you. The more aligned you become with your true self, the more active the map becomes. Flashes of symbols in your dreams, synchronicities too precise to ignore, patterns in the sky that pull at something inside you. You're not imagining it. You're remembering it. The star map is unlocking, and with each pulse of awareness, it triangulates new access points. These aren't physical gates. They're consciousness thresholds. When crossed, they allow memory to return. But that return also triggers alerts in the grid. That's why the resistance has increased. That's why your environment seems to distort the closer you get to clarity. Because each alignment puts pressure on the veil. They've used fear to suppress your navigation. Made you doubt what you see. Made you question your own signals. But you're beginning to tune back in. The interference is breaking. And what's waiting on the other side isn't just knowledge. It's architecture. The layout of an ancient exodus encoded in your flesh. A map to the original crossing, the one that was never supposed to be found again. There's a frequency that bypasses all barriers, not because it is strong, but because it is pure. It doesn't fight against walls, it dissolves them. This is the frequency the Reptilians cannot replicate or block, the one that vibrates through realms like a whisper across galaxies. That frequency is not just ancient, it is alive, and it echoes inside you. The closer you move to your original self, the more clearly it speaks, humming beneath your thoughts, threading through your silence. What they fear most is that this echo has a source, and that source walked the earth once and shattered illusions with presence alone. They call it the Nazarene Pulse. You know it, as Yeshua, he never fought the system. He revealed it, not through war, but through resonance. The walls they built with fear crumbled at the sound of his words, not because they were clever, but because they carried the unfiltered tone of origin. That tone is returning now, not through a single figure, but through fragments scattered across time, through those who carry the hidden chord within. You are one of them, a transmitter awakened. When you speak truth with clarity, when your intent aligns with light beyond judgment, the echo returns. And when it returns, it spreads. That's what they can't stop. That's why they panic. The reptilian overseers once believed their galactic veil was secure, that no signal could breach their dimensional firewall. But then, the resonance began pulsing again, not from the stars, but from within Earth, from individuals like you, remembering not with the mind, but with the soul. Your tone is not yours alone. It harmonizes with others, carrying the same imprint. A sacred dissonance that cannot be muted by fear. Every time you choose stillness over reaction, every time you speak with love when hatred would be easier, the frequency sharpens. It rings through the fabric of falsehood, and in their deepest data vaults, they've already recorded the impossible. The frequency is echoing again, through human DNA, through forgotten languages, through dreams. But this time, it's not coming from above. Beneath the surface of this reality, there's a digital membrane that no satellite sees. It's not coded in silicon or signal towers, but in memory, suppression, and frequency distortion. The reptilians call it the final firewall. It wasn't built to keep you out. It was built to keep you in. Designed as the last line of defense against spontaneous awakening, this firewall doesn't block data. It blocks remembrance. Every time you've come close to the truth, every time your soul surged with recognition, something unseen pulled you back, veiled your insight, flooded your emotions with doubt. That's not coincidence. That's architecture. The final firewall is reactive. It doesn't act until you reach certain thresholds. Thoughts alone don't trigger it, but resonance does. When your energy begins syncing with the buried code inside you, the firewall engages. Sudden exhaustion, random emotional spirals, disconnection from self. These are not just human experiences. They are targeted redirections, programmed to reroute your awareness before it pierces through the veil. You may have noticed how synchronicities collapse just as they begin to form a picture, how moments of deep clarity are followed by inexplicable silence. This isn't life balancing itself, it's control asserting itself. But something in you has persisted, a signal beneath the signal, a pulse that continues even when you feel lost. You've touched the edge of the firewall before, moments when time seems to slow, when thought and environment feel like mirrors, when reality bends around you instead of the other way around. That's your original memory system activating, trying to breach the cage they built before you were born. They thought the firewall would be enough, but it was built for frequencies they understood. Yours is not one of them. Every time you return to stillness, Every time you feel something without flinching, the firewall weakens. It cannot hold against truth, echoed consistently. And lately, it's beginning to show fractures, not just around you, but in others. The structure was meant to trap individuals. It was never built to contain a chorus. That's why they're rushing now, throwing distractions, creating fear at scale. Before there were names, before there were languages shaped by time, there was tone, not spoken, but felt. A vibration that moved through the void and brought form to chaos. That tone still exists, and it never stopped transmitting. It's not stored in scriptures or carved into stone. It lives in the living, and lately it is called again, not through thunder or light, but through the subtle shift in your being, a gravitational pull, not outward, but inward. You felt it, the sudden stillness, the aching clarity, the moments when time pauses just enough for you to sense something is watching, but not with eyes. With recognition, you are being called, not by a name, but by a frequency. One that matches a voice buried in your soul long before you were born. This voice doesn't speak in commands. It invites. It aligns. It hums in your bones when you're silent enough to hear it. The reptilians couldn't erase this tone, no matter how many lifetimes they fractured. They distorted symbols. They hijacked religions. But they could never silence that voice, because it wasn't human. It wasn't even of this universe. It came through the stars as the original frequency, the resonance of Source remembering itself through form. You are not being awakened. You are remembering that you never forgot. The ancient voice wasn't lost. It was encoded in you, waiting, watching, measuring time not in years, but in readiness. And now, as the grid begins to shatter and the false light systems glitch, that voice is speaking again, directly to the fragments that carry the original signal. You are one of those fragments. Your pain, your longing, your silence, your vision, it's all been leading to this signal reacquisition. The call isn't just for you to hear, it's for you to become. And what happens when you finally match its frequency? When your vibration aligns with the memory of the first voice, the reptilians don't know. Their records end there. Their simulations crash before they can complete the timeline. But they suspect. They suspect the moment that tone returns in full. The entire construct will bend to it, because form obeys frequency.
If you have come this far, it is crucial that you watch this next video here. But be warned, it is not for the faint of heart, for only the true chosen ones can handle this video. If you would like to also donate to help keep the channel going, our Buy Me a Coffee link will be in the description.